The night was alive with soft chatter and the clinking of glasses. The grand ballroom of the Starlight Hotel shimmered under golden chandeliers as one of the most powerful women in the city prepared to make her entrance. Catherine Ellis, the CEO of Ellis Enterprises, was known for her elegance, intelligence, and wealth. Yet, behind her commanding presence, she carried a secret, a hard longing for something real, untouched by fame, business, or money. And that was where our story began. But before you hear about Catherine and the challenge she threw so carelessly into the air, let me tell you about someone else. A man whose life couldn't be more different from hers. His name was Daniel Cole. Daniel was a single father, raising his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, in a tiny apartment on the quiet side of the city. Once upon a time, he had dreamed of being a pianist. Music had flowed through his veins since he was a child, but life had its way of closing doors. When his wife passed away unexpectedly, Daniel traded his piano keys for construction tools, working long hours just to keep food on the table and provide for Lily's future. His hands, once soft and nimble, had grown rough and calloused from years of labor. But every night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Daniel sat by the old, slightly broken piano his late wife had loved, and he played. He played not for money or fame, but for the memories of her and for the dreams he still whispered quietly into the night. One evening, fate decided to cross his path with Catherine's. Lily had been chosen to perform at a charity gala hosted by Ellis Enterprises. She was in the children's choir, and Daniel, exhausted after a long day at work, put on his one decent suit to accompany her. The gala was full of the wealthy and powerful, a world so far from his own. He kept to the side, quietly watching, making sure Lily was comfortable among the other children. And then, during the evening's entertainment, Catherine took the stage. Tall, poised, with an aura that commanded silence. She was asked what she thought about love and what kind of man could ever win her heart. People laughed, expecting some clever answer. Instead, Catherine smirked slightly and said, half joking, half serious, "If a man can sit at a piano and play Chopin, not just play, but feel it, I'll marry him. Because only then will I know he understands passion deeper than money." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, treating it as a whimsical remark. But Daniel froze. Chopin. That was the composer his wife had adored, the music that had carried him through sleepless nights, the sound that had become the lullaby of his broken heart. Lily tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, you can play Chopin." He shook his head. "This isn't our world, sweetheart. But life has a way of forcing hearts into places they least expect." When one of the performers scheduled for the night cancelled last minute, chaos struck among the organizers. Out of desperation, the director asked if anyone in the audience could step up. And to Daniel's horror, Lily raised her tiny hand and shouted, "My daddy can play Chopin." The entire ballroom turned to look at him. Whispers spread like wildfire. What was this man, clearly not of their world, doing here claiming to know Chopin? Catherine's sharp eyes narrowed, intrigued. She leaned forward and said in that calm, commanding tone, "Then let him play." Daniel felt his stomach twist. His palms, rough and trembling, felt unworthy of the polished black grand piano waiting under the spotlight. But then, he looked at Lily. Her little eyes shone with belief. Belief he hadn't felt in himself for years. So he walked forward. The room fell silent. Daniel sat at the piano. For a moment, his hands hovered uncertainly above the keys. His heart raced. And then, he began. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne flowed into the room, soft and uncertain at first, but then stronger, deeper. His rough fingers remembered what his heart had never forgotten. The melody grew, filling the space with a haunting beauty that stilled even the most talkative guests. The chandeliers seemed to tremble with each note. Daniel closed his eyes, and suddenly he wasn't in a ballroom anymore. He was back in his tiny living room, his late wife leaning against the piano, smiling at him. He was playing for her, for Lily, for the life he had once dreamed of. Every note carried his pain, his love, his hope. By the time the final chord faded into silence, the room was no longer laughing. There wasn't a dry eye in sight. The crowd, stunned into stillness, erupted into thunderous applause. Lily clapped the loudest, her little face beaming with pride. Catherine stood slowly, her eyes shimmering with tears she hadn't expected. For the first time in years, she wasn't the CEO, the untouchable woman of power, she was simply a woman who had been moved. She walked to Daniel, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor, and whispered into the microphone. "You've stunned me. You've reminded me what it means to feel. And if I meant my words tonight, then yes, you are the man who could win my heart." The audience gasped. Daniel, still catching his breath, shook his head. "I'm not a rich man, Miss Ellis. I don't have your world, or your status. All I have is my daughter, and this music." Catherine smiled faintly. "And perhaps that's all I've ever been searching for." From that night on, their lives began to intertwine. Catherine, who had built walls around herself for so long, found in Daniel a man who valued honesty over wealth, and music over power. Lily adored her, and Catherine found herself falling not just for Daniel, but for the family she never had. The road wasn't easy. There were whispers, scandals, board members who doubted Catherine's choices. Daniel wrestled with his own fears of inadequacy. But together, with music as their bridge, they overcame each challenge. In the end, Catherine didn't just find a man who could play Chopin, she found a man who could play her heart. And Daniel didn't just rediscover his music, he found love again, a second chance for himself and for Lily. And so, the story that began with a challenge ended with something far more powerful, a promise. Because sometimes, the most beautiful performances aren't given on stage, but in the quiet, everyday symphonies of love, sacrifice, and family. Sparkle's inspiring message to end on. True love isn't found in wealth, power, or perfection. It's found in the courage to be real, in the music of shared struggles, and in the harmony of hearts that choose each other despite the odds.